And joining us now, Tara Setmayer, former GOP communications director, and Adam Gentleson, former chief of staff for Senator John Fetterman. Adam, how normal or, kind of traditionally normal is it for President-elect Trump to use recess appointments to get some or most of his cabinet picks?
It's unprecedented to use it in the way that President-elect Trump, is saying he intends to use it. Now, just to be clear, recess appointments are a power granted the president by the Constitution that has been traditionally and historically and exclusively used to fill appointments under duress for temporary acting purposes, not something that has been used to appoint many members of a cabinet or people who simply can't get confirmed en masse. And I think that's the important distinction here. It is something that's been selectively and occasionally used in the past. And what President Trump is threatening to do here is to use it almost as the routine way to confirm his cabinet members. And he's also threatening to use it in a way that would require forcing the Senate to adjourn over the objections of the Senate itself. So all of that is unprecedented. It's an unprecedented grab of presidential power that he is threatening to do.
And Tara, NBC News reports that the president-elect has already been working the phones to drum up support for Gaetz. What kind of political pressure does this create for Senate Republicans? And that pressure is to presumably have him confirmed the traditional way.
Well, there's tremendous pressure on Senate Republicans to stand up and actually adhere to their oath of office, which is to advise and consent. It's not to pledge loyalty. That's not what this is about. And yet, Donald Trump that's what he's expecting. And I think this is a true test of whether our co-equal branches of government will still function as they're constitutionally intended to. They should not be rubber stamping these unqualified and frankly dangerous candidates that Donald Trump is putting forth. I'm not quite sure how this fulfills his campaign promises to the people who wanted, quote, change, but who were wanting change in the area of the economy or the price of eggs, or for women who thought that Donald Trump was going to be, quote, their protector. We're looking at several men who are accused of significant sexual misconduct in the case of Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth and others, and people who are grossly unqualified on top of that. How is this protecting women? This seems like a betrayal to me. How is this supposed to help affordability for the American people who claim they want to change for those reasons? These people it should be a no-brainer, really, for the Senate Republicans to say no to this. It is not their job to be a rubber stamp for a president who's trying to undermine democratic institutions by putting wholly unqualified people. We are a democracy. They want to turn us into to what's now a word going around, a cacostus. How do you pronounce it? But look it up, because it's one of those ocracies where it's putting people who are not qualified for their positions into the government. And that is not a good sign for the health of our democracy or for what the American people claim they wanted in this election. Cacostocracy.
Yeah, there you go. Tara, the whole thing of, I think it was Musk who said that the president-elect Trump is going to bring a blowtorch to the traditional institutions of American government. That's something that they've been saying from, during this whole election, right? And Adam, meanwhile, your old boss, Senator Fetterman, ran against Dr. Oz for his Senate seat in 2022. Here's what the senator had to say about Trump picking Oz.
He's about protecting and preserving Medicaid and Medicare, then I don't know why that's controversial, but he's going to have a hearing, and then we're going to find out what he's about.
So you're open to confirming him then?
Well, yeah, I am.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think what you see there is Senator Fetterman taking the high road. He placed a very clear condition. He said, he's open to confirming Dr. Oz if Oz himself is committed to protecting Medicare and Medicaid. But I think what you're also seeing there, to get to the other point, is the sort of deference that the Senate traditionally grants a president on his nominees, which only makes the recess appointments threat more extreme. Someone like Senator Fetterman, who ran against Dr. Oz, is still open to confirming him because that's how this process is supposed to work. If the president nominates people who are reasonably well qualified, have background and issue area expertise in the area over which they're being nominated to oversee, then sure, the Senate will perform its advise and consent responsibility. They'll hold hearings. They'll ask the nominee questions. They'll, do some looking into their backgrounds and vetting them. All of that is perfectly normal. But in general, senators will be inclined to give the president the nominees he wants if they are reasonably qualified. But what you're seeing here is President Trump, in other instances like Matt Gaetz, put forward people who are extraordinarily unqualified and have major ethical issues, to say the least. And so those are the folks who are going to run into opposition, and those are the folks that he's threatening to use the recess appointments power in an unprecedented way to force them through and take away the Senate's role in this process.
Tara Sedmayer and Adam Jentleson, thank you both so very much.